My son, David, stood in my kitchen holding the weekly pill organizer. His voice was deliberately calm, like a doctor delivering news. You missed your morning medication again, Mom. Dr. Evans was very clear. Strict adherence is critical for your cognitive health. He set the white plastic box on the counter with a definitive click, right beside a steaming mug of herbal tea. His wife, Chloe, brews it specially for me. Today it smelled and tasted of ash and copper. I had taken my real vitamins an hour before, hidden in my palm during a trip to the bathroom. These new pills were different, prescribed after Chloe's persistent notes to my doctor about my so-called confusion. I gave David my softest, most watery smile, one I've practiced. Of course, dear. This old memory isn't what it was. I placed the small blue pill on my tongue and took a sip of that bitter tea, letting the pill lodge safely under my tongue instead of swallowing. I needed to get out of the house before it dissolved. I had to reach the bus stop. My destination was the independent pharmacy across town, the one not connected to my insurance network. I needed to get there before the pill melted or whatever was in that tea took full hold. A familiar dizziness was already creeping in at the edges of my sight, the very fog Chloe calls another one of her episodes. David watched me from the living room archway, his expression full of a belief in his wife's concern that broke my heart. I fetched my old leather handbag from the hook. Just popping to the library, David. I need some fresh air. He nodded, already turning back to his laptop screen. Don't get lost, Mum, he said. The gentle condescension in that phrase stung. I walked out, keeping my steps steady until I was on the sidewalk. Then, I discreetly spat the pill into a tissue and buried it deep in my coat pocket. The dizziness, however, was stubbornly real. My body was reacting to something. The bus ride was a blur of grumbling engine and sudden stops. I focused on the cool glass of the window against my temple. At the pharmacy, I asked the young woman at the counter for a private word. She looked skeptical, but led me to a side area. I placed two sealed plastic bags between us. One held the damp, slightly melted blue pill. The other contained a napkin with a dried stain from this morning's teacup. I need these analyzed for any substances not listed on my prescription, I said, using the firm, no-nonsense tone I cultivated over 40 years as a nurse. I can pay in cash, discreetly. Her eyes widened, but then she looked at me, really looked, and saw clarity, not confusion. She nodded, took the bags, and wrote out a receipt slip. As I turned to leave, my glance caught the reflection in the pharmacy's glass door. Idling across the street was a familiar blue sedan, Chloe's car. She must have followed the bus. The chill of the morning hung in the air long after Chloe's car had vanished from the curb. She knew I'd come to the clinic, of course. Now the clock in my head was ticking so loud I could hardly think. I couldn't simply go back home with nothing but a doctor's receipt. I needed a quiet corner, a place they wouldn't think to look. So I walked the 3 familiar blocks to the public library, my sensible shoes clicking on the pavement. The moment I stepped inside, the smell of old books and lemon floor wax wrapped around me like a hug. It felt safe. I found a secluded carrel in the reference section and settled in. With a glance around, I opened my large handbag. Beneath my current knitting project, a simple scarf for my grandson, I felt the familiar, worn leather of my old journal. It was locked with a small brass clasp. My fingers, a bit stiff these days, worked it open. These were my professional notes from my decades as a toxicology nurse, a lifetime ago. I flipped carefully to the sections on heavy metals and plant-based toxins. The symptoms Chloe had so helpfully listed for the doctor were common to many things: memory lapses, tremors, an upset stomach. but that persistent metallic taste in my mouth, the specific, spinning vertigo that came over me at odd times, that pointed a more definite finger. I needed to cross-reference my own symptoms against possible agents. My heart fluttered a little, a nervous bird in my chest. Every soft footstep from another patron made me glance up. Was that Chloe? Had she sent someone? I forced myself to breathe. My own home, my haven, felt like a controlled environment now. They monitored my meals, my pills, my comings and goings under the guise of concern. I wrote down 3 possible compounds in the margin of my library notepad. One in particular, derived from a common garden plant seed if ground to a powder, could be stealthy, slow, cumulative, perfectly mimicking a sad, natural decline. It could easily be slipped into a daily cup of herbal tea. Just then, an elderly gentleman with kind eyes sat down at the carrel opposite mine, giving me a polite nod. I smiled back automatically and closed my journal, slipping it back under my knitting. As I stood to leave, my bad knee buckled slightly and bumped the table. His book tumbled to the floor, splaying open. It was a legal guide for seniors, and it had fallen open to a chapter titled Undue Influence and Testamentary Capacity. My breath caught. "Oh, let me help," I said, my hand trembling as I reached for it. "Thank you," he sighed, taking it back. "My children are already fighting over my house. Can you believe it?" I could believe it all too well. That chapter title seemed to burn itself into my mind. I didn't just need a pharmacist. I needed a lawyer. A quick check of my watch told me the pharmacy would close soon. I had to get my lab results today. Pushing through the library's heavy oak doors back into the afternoon light, my phone buzzed in my purse. A text from my son, David. "Mum, where are you? Chloe said she saw you wandering near the highway. We're worried. Come home now." He'd never used the word wandering with me before. It was a word for confused patients, for lost souls. The game, as they say, had just escalated. I didn't reply to David's text. Instead, I walked back toward the pharmacy, taking a longer route through a busy shopping plaza. I needed the crowd. My heart thudded against my ribs, a frantic drum counting down the minutes until the pharmacy closed. I had to get that analysis report. It was my only tangible proof. Obtaining it meant risking a direct confrontation if Chloe was waiting. David's text was a clear attempt to frame me as a danger to myself, the first legal step toward guardianship. I entered the pharmacy from the rear door through the stockroom, a trick from my days making deliveries. The young pharmacist, Anna, according to her name tag, was at the counter. She started when she saw me. "Mrs. Wilkins, I was about to call. Your results are unusual." She led me to a back office, the hum of the refrigerators the only sound. She handed me a single sheet. The blue pill was a high-dose sedative, not part of any legitimate regimen for early dementia. The tea residue showed traces of a phytotoxin, a compound from a common ornamental plant, Abrus precatorius, rosary pea. The seeds were pretty, red with a black spot. I'd seen them in Chloe's crafting supplies. "This is very serious," Anna whispered. "Do you need me to call someone?" I folded the paper, my hands steady now with cold purpose. "No, thank you. This is all I need." I paid her in cash from my emergency fund, the money I'd kept hidden from David's helpful budgeting. My plans shifted instantly. I couldn't go home, not yet. I needed a safe place to make copies of this report and secure it. I thought of my safe deposit box at the credit union, but David's name was on the signature card. He could access it. Then I remembered. My late friend Evelyn's lawyer. She'd helped Evelyn when her son tried to take her house. I had the card somewhere. I rifled through my wallet, past photos of my grandson, and found the worn business card. Maya Rodriguez, Elder Law. I called from the pharmacy's landline. The receptionist said Ms. Rodriguez could see me in 1 hour if I could get there. It was across town. I took the bus again, clutching my bag with the report inside. As the bus moved, I saw the blue sedan again, 2 cars back. Chloe was patient. She followed the bus all the way to the modest law office. I hurried inside, feeling her eyes on my back. I was safe within these walls, for now. But when I turned to look through the glass door, the sedan was parked across the street, engine off. She was waiting for me to come out. Maya Rodriguez had a kind face, the sort that put you at ease. But her eyes were sharp and missed nothing. She listened without a single interruption as I laid out the whole sorry story. My gradual illness, the mysterious new pills, the bitter tea, the pharmacy report, and my own son David's complicity in it all. I placed the damning analysis sheet on her polished desk. She read it slowly, her expression growing more serious by the second. "You understand this is a criminal allegation, Mrs. Wilkins," she said finally, her voice gentle but firm. "And your son is an accomplice by omission, at the very least." I nodded, my hands folded tightly in my lap. "I was a nurse for 40 years, Maya. I know what I'm seeing. I need to protect myself legally and financially before I can even think about going to the police. To lock down my affairs, so David and that wife of his, Chloe, couldn't touch a thing, even if they managed to have me declared incompetent someday. The emotional devastation of legally disinheriting my only child was a price I had to pay. Outside the window, Chloe's bright blue car sat in the parking lot, a visible threat. Maya outlined a clear plan. First, a new will and a durable power of attorney, naming a neutral third party, a professional fiduciary instead of David. Second, a revocation of any existing medical directives where he was listed. Third, a formal letter to my bank, sent from this office that very day, removing his name from all my accounts. "We can do most of this right now," Maya assured me. "But for your safety, you should not return home." I thought of my things, the comfortable clutter of a long life, my mother's thin wedding band in my jewelry box, the photo albums full of my boys, David and his brother Michael when they were small. "I have to go back just once," I insisted, "to get my documents and a few personal items." Maya frowned. "It's a risk. If they suspect you're onto them, they may become desperate." I knew she was right. But I also knew my own house like the back of my hand. I knew about the loose floorboard under my bed, where I'd stashed my passport, the deed to the house, and my late husband's watch. I told her I would go tonight, after dark, while they were at their regular Friday dinner out. "Give me the keys to your office back door," I said. "I'll bring everything here straight afterward." She reluctantly agreed. For the next hour, I signed paper after paper. Each signature felt like laying another brick in a wall between me and my son. When I finally left, the blue sedan was gone. A small relief. I took a taxi to a quiet diner near my neighborhood to wait for nightfall. Sitting in the scratchy vinyl booth, I ordered a slice of cherry pie I knew I'd never eat. My phone buzzed again on the table. David. "Mom, this is absurd. Where are you?" "We're worried sick. We're filing a missing persons report if you're not home by 7. I checked my watch. It was 5:30. So much for their regular Friday dinner. The pattern had changed, and my heart sank right down into my sensible shoes. Their threat to report me missing was just a bluff, but it showed their panic, plain as day. They needed me back home, contained, before I could talk to anyone else. So much for my quiet dinner and slice of pecan pie. I paid at the counter and decided to walk the 6 blocks home, not up the main street, but through the parallel alley that runs behind all our yards. It was a route I knew well from walking the dog years ago. The dusk was deepening into a proper evening. My back gate let out its familiar, rusty squeak as I pushed it open. I froze right there on the path, listening. No lights glowed from inside. Both their cars were gone. Perhaps they'd actually driven off to look for me, or to see the police about that silly report. This was my only window. I needed to get to my bedroom, retrieve the hidden items, and be gone within 5 minutes. The visceral pain of sneaking into my own home like a thief was the price I had to pay. The silent, empty house felt more dangerous than if they'd been there shouting. I used my key on the back door. The kitchen was neat, Chloe's tidy domain. A new pot of her soothing herbal tea sat on the stove, still warm to the touch. I moved quickly through the dark living room, navigating by memory around the footstool and the side table that holds all the grandkids' photos. In my bedroom, I went straight to the loose floorboard near the window. It lifted easily. The manila envelope was there, a little dusty, but intact. My hands weren't as steady as they used to be as I shoved it deep into my tote bag. As I turned to leave, my sensible shoe caught on the edge of the rug. I stumbled against my dresser, knocking a small perfume bottle, a gift from my daughter, to the floor. The clatter was deafening in the silent house. I held my breath, my heart pounding a rhythm that felt too loud, waiting for a response. None came. I hurried out, down the hall. Passing what was David's old home office, now Chloe's craft room, I saw the door was ajar. The light from a bright lamp spilled out. On the table, clear as day, was a small, inlaid wooden jewelry box. My breath caught. I knew that box. It had belonged to my mother. I'd given it to Chloe when she and Michael married, thinking she'd keep earrings in it. Inside, instead of pearls or trinkets, were a handful of glossy red seeds, each with a single black spot. Rosary pea. Next to it lay a marble mortar and pestle with a fine, pale powder dusting its rim. The evidence was just sitting there, brazenly on display, as if in a workshop. She must have been grinding more. With a trembling hand, I pulled out my phone and took several clear photos. The flash illuminated the room, a stark, guilty burst of light. As I lowered the phone, the twin beams of headlights swept across the front window. A car pulled into the driveway. I was out of time. The back door was too far. I slipped into the narrow hall closet, pushing past the familiar scent of old coats and pulling the door shut just as the front door lock clicked open. The closet air smelled of wool and mothballs. I held my breath, one hand on my tote bag strap, the other against the door. David's voice, tight with a new frustration, came through the house. "Her purse isn't here. She's gone." Chloe answered calmly. "She has to be. Her pills are on the counter." Their footsteps moved toward the kitchen. My bad knee ached from crouching. I had to get out before they searched the house. I needed them to go upstairs so I could slip out the back and get to Maya Rodriguez's office. Every second was agony, listening to my own son sound like a stranger. I heard a teacup clink. "She didn't drink it," Chloe said, sharper now. "David, she knows." A pause. "Don't be silly. She's confused." But he didn't sound sure. Their footsteps started toward the bedrooms. My chance. I eased the door open. The hall was empty. I slid out in my stockings. I'd left my shoes by the door. I took 3 steps before the old hallway floorboard creaked loudly under me. The footsteps in my room stopped. "Mom?" David called, suspicion turning to certainty. I didn't look back. I ran for the kitchen, my old legs protesting. I snatched my shoes but didn't stop to put them on. I yanked the back door open as David came around the corner. "Mum, stop!" he shouted. The fear in his voice was for their plan, not for me. I stumbled down the steps into the cool night, fumbling with the gate latch. I heard Chloe behind him. "Don't let her reach the street." I got the gate open and fled into the dark alley in my stockings, gravel biting my feet. I avoided the main road and cut through Mrs. Parsons' messy backyard, my bag bumping my side. Their car started out front. They'd take the roads. I took the hidden paths, Maya's office still 3 blocks away. A spotlight from a neighbor's yard swept the alley, catching me. I froze. It was just old Mr. Hendricks checking his bins. He peered out. "Marge? That you? Everything okay?" I couldn't get him involved. "Just getting some air, George," I called, forcing cheer, and hurried on before he noticed my bare feet. I turned onto Maya's quiet street. Her building was dark, but her back office light was on, just as promised. I ran the last 20 yards, lungs burning. As I reached for the rear doorknob, headlights swung onto the street. The blue sedan. The key Maya had given me fit the lock. I shoved the heavy door open, stumbled inside, and locked it, leaning against it to catch my breath. Headlights washed over the frosted glass window as a car idled outside. They'd seen me. Maya hurried from the inner office. "Marge, are you all right?" She helped me to a chair. I shook my head and thrust the tote bag at her. "Everything's in here. The photos are on my phone." I had to make Maya understand. Doing so shattered my last hope about David. He had chased me. She peeked through the blinds. A blue Honda, 2 people inside. She reached for her phone. "I'm calling the police." I stopped her. "Please, not yet. They might believe I'm just a confused old woman. You have to file the papers first, make it legal." She saw my desperation and agreed. She took my phone, printed the photos of the rosary peas and the mortar. They looked damning under the office lights. We worked fast. She finalized the papers revoking David's power of attorney, the new will, and a letter to my bank. I signed them all. My hand only trembled on the first one. As I signed the last, a loud knock rattled the back door. David's voice pleaded through the glass. "Mum, please open up. We're so worried. We just want to talk." Maya put a hand on my shoulder and went to the door. She didn't open it. "This is attorney Maya Rodriguez. Mrs. Wilkins is my client and she is safe. You need to leave or I will call the police for trespassing." Silence followed. Then Chloe's shrill voice. "She has dementia. You're taking advantage." Maya was ice cold. I find her perfectly sound. Any further communication goes through me. Now, leave. We heard arguing, then car doors and an engine pulling away. The relief was immense but brief. Maya turned to me, grave. "They won't give up. Accusing me of elder exploitation is their next step. They'll file with Adult Protective Services tomorrow. We have to get ahead of it." She handed me a key. "This is to my sister's garden apartment. It's empty. Go there tonight. Don't use your phone or cards. I'll handle APS in the morning." I took the small, cold key. As I gathered my things to leave, a new fear gripped me. My grandson, Liam, David and Chloe's 8-year-old boy. He was at a sleepover. What were they telling him about his crazy grandma? The thought was a deep wound. I had just legally cut off my son, but I might have lost my grandson forever. The garden apartment was small and neat. I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with the manila envelope, and I planned. Maya was right. By dawn, David and Chloe would be telling everyone their story. APS, the police, my doctor. my word against theirs. A confused old woman versus her concerned son and daughter-in-law. I had the lab report, but they'd call it my paranoid concoction. I needed a witness from inside my own house. I thought of Rosa, my weekly cleaner. She came every Thursday and had been with me for 5 years, long before Chloe moved in. Last Thursday, feeling unwell, I dozed on the couch. I half heard a snippet of conversation from the kitchen. Rosa's hesitant voice. The tea? It smells very strong today. Different. Then Chloe's sharp reply. Just a new blend. Don't touch it. It wasn't much, but it was a thread. Rosa had a key. If I could reach her before David and Chloe changed the locks or poisoned her mind, she might speak to Maya. I had to intercept her before her 9 a.m. shift. The risk was huge. David might be there, or he might have already called her off. I had no way to contact her except in person. I waited until 8:15, then used the apartment's landline to call a taxi to a coffee shop near my home. The bright morning was a cruel contrast to my quiet war. I hid behind a potted plant, watching my street. At 8:50, Rosa's red car pulled up. She got out alone with her cleaning caddy. This was my chance. I hurried across the street. Rosa, I called softly. She turned, her smile fading to concern. Mrs. Wilkins, are you okay? Your son called last night. He said you were very sick, in the hospital. So that was their story. I am not sick, Rosa, and I am not in the hospital. My son and his wife are trying to take my house. They have been making me sick. I saw the doubt in her eyes, the caution of someone who needs her job. The tea, Rosa. You noticed it smelled different. They have been putting something in it. I have proof. I showed her the pharmacy report. Her eyes scanned it, and her expression changed from doubt to horror. She looked from the paper to my face, seeing the woman she'd known for years. They do this to you? She whispered. I nodded. I need your help. Just tell my lawyer what you saw and heard, what you smelled. You will not lose your job. I will pay you for your time. She looked at my house, then back at me. Finally, she nodded. I will talk. This is not right. Just then, the front door of my house opened. David stepped onto the porch, looking right at us. David's face was full of strained concern. Mum, there you are. Thank you, Rosa. He walked toward us, hand out as if to guide me. Rosa stepped back a little, putting herself between him and me. It was a small move, but I noticed. She does not seem lost to me, Mr. David, Rosa said, her voice firm. I just needed Rosa to get away safely, with her promise to help. Confronting my son right there. David reached us. Mum, we were worried. Let's go inside. You should rest. He tried to take my arm. I pulled away. I am not going in, David. I know what you and Chloe are doing. I stayed calm for Rosa. A neighbor across the street stopped collecting her paper to watch. David's friendly look faded. See, this is the confusion I mentioned, Rosa. The paranoia. He looked at her. She needs her medicine. I reached into my bag and pulled out the bottle of blue pills. You mean these? The sedatives you gave me instead of my vitamins? Or the tea with the poison in it? He went pale. He hadn't expected me to know the specifics. Those are from Dr. Evans. Then let's call him right now, I said, holding out the cordless phone I'd brought. We can ask if he prescribed that poison. Using the Latin name seemed to hit him hard. He was quiet, looking from me to Rosa to the neighbor. His story was falling apart. You're sick, Mom, he said again, but it sounded empty. I am getting help, David. Legal help. Rosa will tell my attorney what she's seen. Go inside. and tell Chloe the police will be very interested in her craft supplies." All the colour left his face. He turned and walked stiffly into the house, closing the door. The street was quiet. Rosa let out a shaky breath. "I will go to your lawyer. Today." I gave her Maya's card and some cash for a taxi. As she drove off, I felt a grim sort of win, but it tasted bitter. My legs felt weak as I walked back to the coffee shop to call my cab. Inside, waiting, I saw my reflection in the pastry case glass. An old woman, tired and worn, but with eyes that were finally clear. I turned my phone on for a moment. It buzzed. A text from a number I didn't know. "Grandma, it's Liam. Dad says you're really mad and sick. Are you okay?" It felt like a new kind of poison. They were using my grandson to get to me. Liam's text hit me hard. It went straight to my heart. My hands shook looking at the screen. They were using his innocence. Replying would pull me into their drama. Not replying would hurt him and let them say I was too sick or angry to talk. I turned the phone off. The pain was a sharp ache in my chest. This was the final cost. Back in the garden apartment, Maya called on the landline. Rosa came. She was fantastic. She confirmed the tea incidents and said Chloe had gotten secretive about the kitchen. Also, David called my office. He's offering a deal. I felt a cold dread. What kind of deal? If you drop all legal action, retract your accusations, and quietly move into the assisted living place they picked, they'll ensure you get visits with Liam. He called it sparing the family an ugly spectacle. It's a threat, Marge. I saw it clearly. Isolate me, control the story, and dangle my grandson as a reward. My silence was my one weapon. "My answer is no," I said, my voice steady. "File everything. Contact Adult Protective Services yourself. Invite them to our meeting tomorrow. We go on the offensive." The next day was a strange wait. I stayed in the quiet apartment, organizing my documents and writing a timeline of my symptoms and their actions. I prepared like I was going to court. That afternoon, I met Maya at her office. A weary but attentive woman from APS, Ms. Gable, joined us. For an hour, I laid it out calmly. I gave her the timeline, lab results, photos, and Rosa's statement. I showed her Liam's text. "They are using my love for my grandson to force me into silence," I stated. Ms. Gable took notes. When I finished, she asked a few questions, then sighed. "This is a very clear case of undue influence and attempted financial exploitation. The poisoning claim is for the police, but the rest—" "Mrs. Wilkins, with your permission, I will file a report supporting your capacity and detailing the coercion. This will block any emergency guardianship petition they try." It was the barrier I needed. After she left, Maya gave me a certified letter. "This came for you here? From David." I opened it. It was a formal letter from a law firm, urging me to attend a family mediation about the misunderstandings. At the bottom, in pen, David had scrawled, "Mum, please. Think of Liam. Don't do this." I folded it and put it in the file with the other evidence. "There will be no mediation," I told Maya. "Only the consequences." I had won the battle for my freedom and my home, but leaving her office, the victory felt hollow. I had saved my house, but my family was gone. The quiet apartment waiting for me was the sound of that loss. The certified letter from David's lawyer felt heavy in my hands, but I placed it in Maya's file without a word. My silence was my strategy now. Maya looked at me, her expression careful. "The APS report is a shield, but it's not a sword. To stop them for good, we need to involve the police. The lab report shows poison. That's a crime." I knew she was right. It was clear what I had to do. File a police report today, before David and Chloe could spin their version. The price would be the final public branding of my son as a criminal. I nodded. Let's do it. We drove to the precinct in Maya's sedan. The police station was all buzzing fluorescent lights and worn linoleum. I sat across from a Detective Miller, a man in his 50s with tired eyes. I laid out my evidence in the same order I had for APS: the timeline, the lab analysis from the pharmacy, the photos of the rosary peas. I handed him Rosa's signed statement. My daughter-in-law has been administering a slow poison. My son knew and did nothing. My voice didn't shake. Detective Miller scanned the documents, his frown deepening. This is serious, Mrs. Wilkins. You understand that if we pursue this, your son could face charges as an accessory? I met his gaze. I understand. He took the evidence and said he would assign an officer to visit my house to secure the mortar and seeds if they were still there. He advised me not to return home. As we left, Maya's phone buzzed. It was her receptionist. David had called 3 times, demanding to know where I was and threatening to sue Maya for kidnapping. The pressure was mounting. We drove back to her office in silence. The weight of what I'd set in motion settled on my shoulders. I was having my son investigated for attempted murder. The thought made me feel ancient and hollow. Back at the garden apartment, I tried to rest. The quiet was oppressive. I turned on my old phone for a moment, against my better judgment. There was a voicemail from David, not angry, but broken. "Mum, please, call me. We need to talk. Liam is asking for you. He's crying. Is this really what you want?" He hung up. The manipulation was exquisite, using Liam's tears as a weapon. I deleted the message, but the sound of his voice, so genuinely hurt, lingered. It was a sudden shift, a direct appeal to my heart, not my mind. Could I be wrong? Had I misinterpreted his silence as malice? No. The evidence was on my side, but the doubt, that tiny seed, was planted. I decided to make a cup of tea, my own, from a sealed box I'd bought. As the kettle whistled, my eye caught movement outside the kitchen window. A figure was standing at the edge of the small garden, partly hidden by a laurel bush. It was too tall to be David. The person just stood there, watching the apartment. Then, they raised a hand and pointed directly at my window before melting back into the shadows. The kettle's scream filled the silent kitchen. The figure was gone when I called Maya. She told me to keep the doors locked. Sleep was impossible. I spent the night in my armchair, my late Henry's old fireplace poker across my lap. By morning, my fear had turned into a cold resolve. Someone was watching me, and it wasn't David or Chloe. They wouldn't be so clumsy. I needed to know who. I wanted to see Detective Miller again and push for action. I dressed carefully. Maya picked me up. At the precinct, Detective Miller had news. "Officers visited your house last evening. Your son and daughter-in-law were cooperative. We found the mortar and pestle," he said. It had been washed. No traces. The jewelry box from your photo was empty. Your son said his wife uses it for beadwork and had cleaned it out. They had sanitized everything. Chloe was smarter than I'd thought. The photos were good, but without the physical proof, it was my word against theirs. Miller saw my face. "The lab report is still strong. We're sending someone to interview the pharmacist. We're not dropping it." It was something, but the setback stung. They were adapting. In the car, Maya suggested a new angle. "We need to hit them where it hurts, financially. You own the house. With the new will, they get nothing. But we can speed things up. I can file a civil suit for emotional distress and seek a restraining order. That creates a public record." I agreed. As we talked, my phone buzzed. A text from Liam's number. Grandma, I'm scared. Dad and Mom are fighting really bad. Can I see you? It felt wrong. The grammar was too perfect for my 8-year-old grandson. It was probably Chloe, trying to lure me. But what if it was real? The pressure was awful. I showed Maya. Don't answer, she said. If it's them, it's a trap. If it's Liam, responding pulls him into this. We should ask for a welfare check through Adult Protective Services. It was the right call, but it felt like I was failing him. I put the phone away, my heart heavy. Later, back at the apartment, there was a knock on the sliding patio door. I peeked through the blinds. It was Rosa, my neighbour. She looked pale. I let her in. Mrs. Wilkins, I am sorry to come. I was cleaning today. Mr. David was on the phone. He was talking about a private clinic. He said, "We need to get her committed for evaluation just for 72 hours. That's all we need." My blood ran cold. A 72-hour psychiatric hold. If they could get me declared a danger, even briefly, they could gain control. Rosa's warning changed everything. They were escalating. I thanked her, and she left quickly. I locked the door and leaned against it. This had just become very serious. I had to act first. My eyes landed on Detective Miller's business card. I picked up my landline phone. As I started to dial, I saw through the window a familiar blue sedan driving slowly past the building. The blue sedan drove past. I finished my call to Detective Miller, reporting what Rosa had said about the psychiatric hold. He promised to have patrols watch the apartment. It was a small comfort. I knew I had to move. David knew I was with Maya. He might track me here. I packed my few things. The envelope, some clothes, toiletries. I left a thank you note for Maya's sister and slipped out the back gate. I walked several blocks to a modest hotel I'd seen before. I paid cash for a week, using my mother's maiden name, Margaret Shaw. The room was bland, but safe. I called Maya. She was alarmed, but agreed I'd done the right thing. "The civil suit is filed," she told me. "A process server will try to deliver it to David and Chloe tomorrow. It might provoke them." Let it, I thought. Maybe they'd make a mistake. That evening, I wrote a long letter to my grandson, Liam. I didn't send it. I kept it with my papers. It explained that I loved him, but that his parents had done something very wrong to hurt me, and I had to stop them. It was for him to read when he was older. Writing it drained me. The threat of being taken felt constant. The next morning, I went to a copy shop and made duplicates of all my evidence. I mailed one set to my brother in Oregon, asking him to open it only if he didn't hear from me in a month. Leaving the shop, I saw a woman across the street who looked like Chloe, with a scarf over her hair. She was on her phone, glancing around. I ducked into a diner. She got into a blue sedan and drove away. Had she seen me? My worry was now a tool for survival. Back at the hotel, the room phone rang. It was the front desk. "Mrs. Shaw, a Mr. David Wilkins is here to see you. He says he's your son." My breath caught. How did he find me? I told the clerk I wasn't receiving visitors. I heard raised voices. Then the line went dead. I peered through the peephole. Soon, David was outside my door. He knocked softly. "Mum? Please, just talk to me." I stayed silent. He slumped against the door. "I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I was scared. Chloe had debts. She said it was the only way." Then he whispered, "She's not done. She has someone watching you. Be careful." He slid an envelope under the door and left. I waited before picking it up. Inside was a photo of Liam at school, smiling, and a single key. The key to my own back door. The key felt cold and familiar in my palm. David's apology, if real, changed nothing legally, but it changed everything in my heart. The photo of Liam was a peace offering, but the warning about Chloe's associate was a threat. I now wanted to end this, decisively. I needed to use David's moment of weakness. The risk would be trusting him, even slightly. I called Detective Miller from the hotel phone. I reported David's visit and his warning. He admitted knowledge of the plot, sir. He said his wife has debts and that she has someone watching me. Miller was interested. That could be enough for us to bring her in for questioning. If we can pressure her, she might crack. We'll pick her up today. He advised me to stay put. I then called Maya and updated her. She was cautious. This could be a trick, Marge, to get you to drop your guard. I knew that, but the raw pain in David's voice had sounded real. I spent the day in the hotel room, waiting. The tension was a physical thing, a tightness in my chest. Late in the afternoon, Maya called. Chloe was taken in for questioning. David came to my office. He wants to make a formal statement against her. He's scared she'll implicate him further. So he was turning on her to save himself. It was a selfish move, but it worked in my favor. The sudden change was David's betrayal of his wife, shifting the dynamics entirely. I allowed myself a small, sad hope. Perhaps my son was not lost completely, but I couldn't see him yet, not until the law had run its course. That evening, Detective Miller called. Chloe lawyered up immediately. But your son's statement is helpful. We're charging her with attempted assault with a deadly weapon, the poison, and conspiracy. We'll likely offer him a deal for his testimony. I thanked him and hung up. The machinery of justice was grinding forward. My revenge was being executed by the state. It should have felt victorious. It felt empty. A knock came at the door. It was a hotel staffer with a delivery, a small bouquet of daisies, my favorite. The card read, "I'm so sorry. I love you. David." No asks, no demands, just an apology. I put the flowers on the table. They looked cheerful in the drab room. The small was that the weapon I'd needed most wasn't more evidence, but my son's conscience. However, the uncertainty remained. Chloe was in custody, but she had a lawyer and a mysterious associate. The game wasn't over. As I turned off the light to sleep, my phone lit up with a new message from an unknown number. "You think you've won. You haven't met me yet." The text from an unknown number was a clear threat. Chloe, even in custody, was reaching out through someone. I was determined to see her convicted and to find out who was helping her. I immediately forwarded it to Detective Miller. He called back, sounding very serious. They were checking her phone records and would have an officer near my hotel that night. I didn't feel safe. The hotel walls felt thin. I packed my bag, ready to move. But I knew running wasn't an answer. I had the law, Maya, and the APS report on my side. I was the victim. I decided to stop hiding. I booked a room for a week under my real name, Marge Wilkins, at a nicer hotel downtown. Let them see I wasn't afraid. The next morning, I moved. The new place was busy with people, which made me feel less alone. Maya met me there. She had big news. David had signed a full confession, naming Chloe in the poisoning plan and explaining her money motives. He agreed to testify. For that, the DA offered probation and counseling, no jail time. I took that in. My son would be free, but marked by this. "And Chloe?" I asked. Maya gave a tight smile. With David's testimony and the lab report, she was facing felony charges. She'd likely plead guilty and serve time. The legal fight was over. Chloe would be punished. David would live with the shame. I had my home back, but a huge hole where my family used to be. Maya handed me an envelope. David asked me to give you this. He's moving out of your house today. He's renting a place. He wants to know if he can see you when you're ready. I took it, but didn't open it. A week later, I went home after the police finished, and the locks were changed. It was too quiet. My neighbour Rosa came to clean, and we shared a pot of tea. We talked about neighbourhood news, not about David or Chloe. Reclaiming my home was a slow process. I donated Chloe's craft things to a community centre. I put the photo of my late husband, Liam, the one David had slipped under the door, on the mantel. A month later, a letter came from the district attorney. Chloe had taken a plea deal. Guilty to attempted assault, sentenced to 3 to 5 years. David was on probation. The case was closed. That afternoon, I sat on my porch, watching the leaves turn. This wasn't about celebration. It was about acceptance. I had protected myself. I had used the law and my own courage as an older woman to fight back. My family was broken, but I was whole. I saw a car pull up down the street. David got out, alone. He stood for a moment, just looking at the house. Then he got back in and drove away. I didn't wave, but I didn't look away. The war was over. Now came the long work of peace. The envelope from the probation department was official and thick, feeling weighty in my hands, as if it held more than just paper. It required my presence at a meeting to discuss victim impact and restitution. David's probation officer wanted to hear from me directly about my son. The deadline was this Friday at 10 in the morning. I placed the letter on my kitchen table, right beside the framed photo of my grandson, Liam. I knew what I had to do. I had to decide what to say about David to the authorities. It meant reopening the wound just as it began to scab over, a painful reminder of all that had happened with Chloe and the betrayal that followed. I called my daughter Maya for advice later that morning. She listened quietly, then said, "This is standard procedure, Mum, but your words will influence David's probation terms. Be honest, but think about what you truly want." What did I want? I wasn't sure anymore. Justice had been served in court for Chloe, but David seemed like a ghost of the boy I raised, distant and changed. After hanging up, I spent the day in my garden, pulling weeds with more force than necessary, the dirt under my nails a familiar comfort. The physical work helped, but my mind churned with old memories and new doubts. The pressure came from within. The mother in me who still ached for her son versus the woman who had been deeply hurt and was trying to heal. That evening, Rosa came to clean, as she does every Thursday. She noticed my quiet mood right away. "You are thinking of your boy," she said, not a question but a gentle observation as she dusted the shelves. I nodded, my throat tight. She wiped the counter slowly, her movements careful. "My cousin, her son went to jail for a time. She said the hardest part was forgiving herself for not seeing it sooner." Her words hung in the air between us, warm with shared understanding. Was I blaming myself? Perhaps I was, for all the moments I might have missed, for not being able to shield our family from this pain. Then the doorbell rang, breaking the quiet. It was a delivery man with a large potted plant, a peace lily, its white blooms stark and hopeful against the dark green leaves. The card read, "For your garden, from Liam." It was signed with his messy 8-year-old handwriting, the loops uneven and dear. My heart squeezed tight in my chest. How did he send this? David must have helped him, which meant my son was reaching out through my grandson, a silent plea from a father to his mother. I brought the plant inside, my hands trembling slightly as I set it on the table. This was a direct appeal from Liam, bypassing all the legal mess and adult complications. It changed everything in an instant. I couldn't ignore my grandson's sweet gesture, but engaging meant potentially reopening communication with David, a step I wasn't sure I was ready for, tangled up with old hurts. As I went to place the plant on a saucer to protect the wood, I noticed a small folded paper tucked among the leaves. Carefully, I unfolded it. It was a child's drawing, a stick figure grandma and a boy under a big smiling sun, with the words, "I miss you," scrawled in bright crayon. It was undeniably from Liam, a pure expression of love from a little boy who just wanted his grandma back. I knew I had to respond to this, but doing so meant stepping back into the tangled web of our family, with all its history and heartache. I looked at the probation letter on the table, its official print stark under the lamplight. My statement was due in 48 hours. Now, whatever I said to the authorities would be influenced by this tiny paper plea from my grandson, a reminder that family ties run deep, even when they're frayed. The weight of the decision felt heavier than ever, balanced between the past and the future, between holding accountable and holding close. I placed Liam's drawing on the fridge with a magnet, right where his school pictures used to be. The silence in the house felt different now, charged with a decision I had to make. I had to see Liam, but on my terms, without David using him as a pawn. I wanted to arrange a supervised visit through a neutral party before I gave my victim impact statement. It would mean the emotional risk of seeing my grandson and facing the pain of what his parents had done. I called Maya again. She connected me with a family counselor who could facilitate a supervised visit at a community center. It was set for Thursday afternoon, the day before the probation meeting. I felt pressed for time. I had to prepare my heart for seeing Liam after all that had happened. I worried David might try to interfere or use the meeting to plead his case. Thursday came. I dressed in a bright sweater, something Liam would like. The community center playroom was bright and noisy with other families. I waited at a small table. Then a social worker brought Liam in. He looked older, more serious. He ran to me and hugged my waist tightly. "Grandma," he whispered. We sat and coloured together. He didn't mention his parents. He talked about school, his friends, a new bike. The normalcy was a balm. Near the end, he looked up and said, "Dad cries sometimes. He says he's sorry." I just nodded and squeezed his hand. The visit was short, but it was everything. After, the social worker told me David had waited outside, as agreed. He had not tried to contact me. His compliance, his respect for the boundaries, was unexpected. It suggested genuine remorse, not manipulation. Driving home, I felt a shift. The anger towards David was still there, but it was now mixed with a sorrow for what we had all lost. When I arrived home, there was a voicemail on my landline from David. "Mum." His voice was rough. "Thank you for seeing Liam. I won't bother you. I just wanted to say, I'm attending the counselling. I'm trying to be better." He hung up. No requests, no excuses, just a statement. I sat in my darkening living room. The probation meeting was tomorrow. I had my victim impact statement drafted, focusing on the facts of the crime. Now, after seeing Liam and hearing David's message, it felt too cold. But softening it could be seen as weakness. I faced a difficult choice: stick to the hard facts for the court, or acknowledge the complexity of a son who was both perpetrator and victim. I looked at the clock. I had until morning to decide. I woke before dawn, the draft of my statement on the kitchen table next to Liam's drawing. I made a pot of strong coffee and read it over. It was factual, detailing the poisoning, the fear, the betrayal. It was true, but it was only part of the truth. The other part was the boy I raised who had lost his way. Today, I needed to speak my whole truth, not just the victim's truth. I might get less sympathy from the system, but it was a price I was willing to pay for my own peace. At the probation office, I sat across from Officer Brennan and David, who wouldn't meet my eyes. The room was small, with a faint smell of old paper. Officer Brennan asked me to describe the impact. I set aside my drafted statement. The crime stole my sense of safety in my own home, I began, my voice steady. It made me question my own mind. But the greater injury was the loss of my son. I looked at David then. He finally looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. I hold him accountable for his actions. But I also see a man who was swayed by greed and a troubled marriage. My impact is a lifetime of memories now shadowed by this. What I want is not more punishment, but genuine rehabilitation. For him to become a father Liam can be proud of. Officer Brennan nodded, making notes. David wiped his face with his sleeve. He didn't speak. The meeting ended with the officer outlining David's continued probation terms, including mandatory therapy and community service. As we stood to leave, David hesitated. "Mum," he said, his voice thick. Can I write to you? Sometimes?" I considered it. The door was not open, but it was not locked shut. "You may write," I said. "I will read your letters. No promises beyond that." He nodded, a fragile hope in his expression. That afternoon, I returned to my quiet house. The healing was not dramatic. It was the slow, quiet work of stitching a life back together. I called Maya and told her about the meeting. She approved of my choice. I then called the family counselor and arranged for monthly supervised visits with Liam, independent of David's situation. I reclaimed my routines, gardening, library visits, coffee with Rosa. The anger settled into a dull ache, a part of me now, but not all of me. Weeks later, a letter arrived from David. It was short, about his therapy and a job he'd found. I wrote back a brief note, acknowledging his effort. It was a start. The war was over, and the peace was fragile and quiet. I sat on my porch that evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in gentle colours. The house was mine, my mind was clear, and my heart, while scarred, was still capable of hope. That was enough.